Hi, jewells68 here for Talk to Me Tuesday on Tuesday, May 23rd. I got sick of not having something behind me, so I started piecing something together from some scraps I have. This square and this square were part of a panel, and just the remnants of the just the square with a little bit of border on it was in a scrap bag that I bought years ago. It is an In the Beginnings fabric called Oceanica was the line, and I luckily found a couple more scraps, this one and this one, in the same scrap bag. So they came from two different scrap bags from the same store. I went looking, and all the store had left of this line was this border fabric, which, as you can see, I've cut up already to add kind of two different squares out of the same border. This is some of the stuff that got cut off the squares, and right now I'm trying to decide how to use the rest of this. This is just a creative exercise. I just fell in love with it when I saw it in the scrap bag. I just thought it was kind of cool. It may end up as a Linus quilt. I don't really know what's going to happen to it yet. And then this was the other part of the same line that I found, and I think I have at least a yard of this. So, so we'll see what happens with that. But I was just tired of not having anything behind me, so I decided it was time to start piecing something again without any, I didn't really have any goal in mind. So I'm thinking once I get a small section together, I'm going to try that medallion method of quilting the center part of a quilt first and then adding the borders. It's a sort of quilt as you go method, but it's not where you do each individual block. Like you do the whole big chunk, center chunk with the front batting and back, and then she has a method for attaching the front batting and back of the borders, and it's actually been used to make quilts bigger. She mentioned someone who came to her. This is Ann Peterson that does the class that I was taking on Craftsy, but she mentioned someone that came to her that wanted to enter, she finished a quilt and she wanted to enter it in a show, and then she realized it was just a little bit too small for the requirements for that particular show. And so she used this method to just add a border on to make the quilt big enough, and none of the judges even felt it was noticeable enough, I guess, to even mention in their notes. So it's a pretty neat thing to try, I think. I don't know, we'll see. The only other crafty stuff I've been doing is I did rejoin New Mexico Women's Chorus this season, and some of you that have been around here for a while will remember my saga of the purple vest. That was a pain in the ass. Well, they've changed their accent color, so now, even though we're all in black still, the accent color is they call it a turquoise. As far as I'm concerned, I think it's a teal, but we're not going to argue that. It just has to match. So it can be a vest. I'm not going down that route again. I actually found a shirt at the thrift store. This time they're smart. They, instead of having to make it, they say you can buy it. They don't care. It just has to match. And what they're using to let everybody match the color is a paint swatch, a paint chip, from a specific brand at a specific store, so that you can go get the little paint swatch card and take it with you to match it. So I thought that was pretty smart. A lot of ladies are wearing, like, chiffon-y scarves that they kind of ordered together and had supposedly dyed to match. I don't think it's anywhere close to the color. Whatever. Anyway, I found a shirt in the exact color. It matched the swatch exactly, but sadly it does not fit. So I'm going to pass it on to one of the ladies that needs something to wear, and I don't think she has much money to spare. So, and I got it at the thrift store, so it's not like it's a huge investment for me, but it's a really nice blouse and kind of a businessy button-up shirt. And I told her, I think it's going to be too big for her, but I told her if she doesn't like how it looks closed, she can always maybe wear a black shell tank top, whatever, underneath, and wear it open, and then it'll be more of an accent color. So we'll see. So I still have to get an accent. I did find a new pair of black pants and top that fit. The only problem with the top is that it had an opening in the sleeve right here, where in a lot of sleeves you'll see them where it's buttoned or whatever, but in this case it had a long sort of ribbon of fabric, of the same fabric as the shirt, that you're supposed to tie into a bow, and I'm not really a bow person, so after I washed it, tried it on, and made it fit, I immediately cut that thing off. I left just enough to fold it over and stitch it down so that it had a neat end, and then after I did that, I just held it closed and I sewed a button onto it. I sewed a button onto it so that if somebody was up close, they see that they think it's a button closure, you know, right there. But it's really all one piece. It's all sewn together. And the sleeve was still plenty big enough for my arm to get in and out without needing the button to open. So, yeah. So I'm going to insert a picture of the before and after of the shirt sleeve here. And then the last thing I have to show you is I have a coworker who's always very appreciative of what I do for her, and she always remembers me on my birthday and at the end of the year and Administrative Professionals Day. She in particular, we shared a lot when Mom was going through her last few years, because she was raised by her grandmother, and her grandmother was in her 80s and 90s when we first started working together, so she was still taking care of her Grammy, and she sadly passed away a year ago, a little over a year ago, and when she was going through the house, she found some hand embroidered, like, it's like a table runner, and one of them's like a little, I guess it's sort of like a square table runner to go in the middle, centerpiece to go under the middle of the table or something like that. But they were unfinished. I mean, the embroidery was done, but they'd never been hemmed or anything. And she asked me if I would hem them for her, and I said absolutely. She just recently got a sewing machine in the last few months and has started learning how to use it, but she just didn't feel confident enough to try to do something that she wanted to be able to use to remember her Grammy and put it out on her table. So, yeah. So I was looking for something to do the other day that was crafty but not too involved, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw that baggie sitting there that had been sitting there for a year almost, maybe like 8 months since she started going through her Grammy's house, and I decided to go for it. Originally, I had talked about trying to use some of my decorative stitches with some colored thread or something like that on the border. I decided that because the focus of this was her memories of Grammy, and her Grammy had hand embroidered and hand cross-stitched these things, that I didn't want to put anything on there that would take away from or distract from, take the focus away from the handwork. So I ended up just using some natural cotton thread that I use a lot for piecing, which is just sort of a very natural off-white kind of cream color, which is pretty much invisible on these projects. And I'm going to show you these right now just because this is the cross-stitched table runner. So you can see I was just afraid that I didn't want to use anything. This is all cotton, the thread is, the embroidery thread, and I didn't want to use anything that might, I don't know, react differently because there's some stains and stuff on here that she wants to try to get rid of. She's looking for something she can soak it in maybe. So if you have any suggestions on that, please leave it in the comments. But here's this, and all I did was, there was really frayed raw edges, so I had to do a little trimming there. It's not exactly symmetrical, but I think I did a pretty good job. And now it has a completely finished edge. I just took one side and folded it over twice, you know, pressing it, and stitched it down, and then did the opposite ends to put the finished corner on there. And yeah, So I feel like that's, you can't even see my stitching, and so it just looks finished, and you would never know that her Grammy didn't do it herself. So anyway, so there's that one. And you can see there's some discoloration, thanks from it just being folded in a bag for years. So if you have any suggestions on something she can soak it in to get that out, please let me know. And then this one's more of a dish towel feeling fabric. But here's the back. And I actually, this one had a selvage end that said what it was, and I decided I wanted that visible because it's very vintagey looking. It says it's a luncheon cloth. I don't know what that means. So it tells what the print is that she used for the embroidery and cross stitch. So I did the other sides that had the frayed ends, frayed sides, and I double folded that, pressed it, and stitched that first. And then I just folded the selvage end over once since it wasn't going to fray at all. And that way she could see the little imprinting on the back of what that pattern was. And then here's her beautiful hand stitching. She's not sure exactly when she did this. She's thinking maybe 70s, but she's not really sure. This one's fairly discolored also, so again, if you have any suggestions on something she can soak that in that's not going to fade the hand stitched thread stuff, please let me know. I'm going to give these to her today. She's very excited to get them. And yeah. And that's all I have to show you. I look forward to watching your videos. Hopefully I'll have even more to show you next week, and I will see you next week. Bye!